Hi there, Ron. How are you doing?
Well, Finley, thank you for the the return invitation to Iconic Scottish Brands. Things are going well.
Good, good. Now, just the two of us and two brands to unpack to try and find the magic in. Tell
Yep.
me, what are you bringing to the table this month?
Well, this month I was kind of exploring the idea of brand storytelling, and in my memory, I remembered uh, a kind of front runner with this, which was Johnny Walker, and it was the actor Robert Carlyle, the man who walked around the world. I think it's about 6 minutes plus one rolling shot of Robert Carlyle, who I like walking and storytelling the origins, evolutions, and introducing the potential futures of the Johnny Walker brand. And I thought that's dynamite. And I had forgotten about that. And I thought that what Johnny Walker has done, there's a number of things, but just at an immediate level. And I think it's 200 years old, roundabout now, and there's special editions, so they've got all of that going on. But there was a number of things, and one of them was that I was thinking about heritage and history and, okay, Scottishness and so on. But this one has traveled far and wide, obviously, so it's an international, it's a global brand, but also that you've got that safety, that trust, the authenticity, but it's also relevant still now and relevant in emergent new tomorrows and futures. So it's got that heady mix of that very few brands are any good at. They're either old or they're kind of cutting edge, or there's something in between. And I would say Johnny Walker does a good job of tapping into all three of those. Right?
Cool.
So
So what you're saying to me, and it's a shame that
drink Johnny Walker.
you're bringing a bottle of Johnny Walker to the table.
Aye, and that that is funny because I'm not a whiskey drinker, but I'm attracted to the branding. And yeah, but maybe I'll become one. That's what I mean. It's there. It's in the consideration set. But a number of other wee touch points, just where you get me going, and then we'll see what you think, and we'll talk about your brand. The the tagline, keep walking. Fantastic tagline. You're always relevant. It's moving forward. It's the human condition. It's an integral part of your journey. All of that stuff. I mean, I'd go as far as to say, and I know it's a different arena and so on, but Nike Just Do It. I'm quite certain Nike had a wee look at Keep Walking.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's there. Another one.
Yeah.
Kind of singular. You see this a lot in alcohol now, but Johnny Walker way ahead of the curve in terms of the singular, the square bottle design, and the label being at an angle. So salience off the shelf, uniqueness, very much like the Coke bottle. So just as a couple of things, and one of the first big brands to sort of move into sort of engaging honeypot storytelling, immersive themed entertainment. And they went on to things, I think Jude Law and The Gentleman's Wager and so on, and very sophisticated branding. And you mentioned there was, I know you've got a link coming, we get into sports and so on, but brand alliances too.
Yeah, no, it's interesting what you say, and like you, I love the stories behind the whiskey brands because there's a question, isn't there? I mean, you've only got three ingredients actually in a whiskey, and yes, we know that they're distinct, but
Yeah,
for me, it's often the story, and that can be the heritage,
yeah.
or maybe it's the packaging, but how do you make it stand out?
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I really love that one Johnny Walker that you've brought. Um, yeah, one of the oldest heritages, but they understood story right from the beginning. I love that connection to
Yeah.
the individual and then their story, but then how that comes out into the brand. So yeah, the
Yeah.
connection with the sport. So what I'm actually going to bring to the table is, it's quite topical, the Scottish football team.
I do.
Now, I guess the business is the Scottish Football Association, but which kind of manages and delivers the team and stuff. But Scottish football team, they've had a bit of a roller coaster week. They've just qualified for the next European Championships, the Euros. Next year, 20 plus years since they've actually been at a major championship. There's all the fans are jumping up and down about that, very excited, as were the team. In this day and age, we get this amazing kind of social media footage of the actual team celebrating and seeing them as individuals, which is really nice. But the commercial for a moment and that link that you talk about, I've been watching a fair bit of sport, been watching football and rugby. It's a busy time of year.
Right.
I was watching the Scottish rugby team as well. And so there's a kind of autumn competition series going on just now. And I just noticed, I don't know if I actually kind of remarked on it, but their new strip sponsor is Johnny Walker.
Johnny Walker.
Now, obviously there's all sorts of commercial reasons and branding reasons why they've gone there. There's been a very long history of the famous grouse as a sponsor of Scottish rugby. Now, you said an interesting thing. I'm not a whiskey drinker, but I might become one. And that's been the challenge of whiskey, hasn't it?
Yeah.
That there's a certain demographic. Now, when I was a young man and lived in France for a while, actually, what we all drank when we went to the nightclubs was Scotch, was whiskey.
Whiskey.
And Johnny Walker was one of them. There's these big, very strong export brands, which Johnny Walker is, but it's not so well known in Scotland. So I would suggest, by associating with the Scottish rugby team, so, the players are in their 20s. Demographic, the watching demographic is younger, and actually there's an interesting question around sports and alcohol advertising and sponsorship, but that's another debate. So I'm just kind of throwing that back into you, talking about national sports teams and whiskey, Johnny Walker. I just thought that was quite interesting.
I think you're right. The couple of things, and we've talked about this, the cultural context. So in France, the younger man's drinking, I mentioned earlier very much, Johnny Walker, global brand, different perceptions in different territories. The grouse, as far as I'm aware, #1 whiskey brand in Scotland, blended whiskey brand in Scotland. Jack Daniel's #1 globally. Johnny's up there. And what you're talking about is a move entirely to recalibrate it, to get usage and make it more appealing to a more youthful demographic. Entirely, keep the existing one, but add to and introduce to a new one, and challenge the grouse. I mean, it's just as you're saying, and I think that Johnny. How well does the grouse travel? I wouldn't say nearly half as well. I mean, you've got with Johnny Walker, we've got that nice tagline, and we've got the walking man and his evolution. You've got the iconography. Captain Morgan's is, a kind of cheap imitation of that idea, but it's brand personification. But it's also relating to, there's a lot of good cues in there, and like you said, from the ingredients and so on, and this is not restrictive to whiskey. I mean, it could be guitars or sneakers or whatever product class. And, I'm a firm believer that, to a greater or lesser degree, everybody sells the same basic thing, within reason. There may be slight variations, and you can argue that it's singular and so on, but I think it truly is the brand that differentiates it. So that's why Walker is playing with perception with the rugby team. It's about how you think and feel about it as much as what goes into it. Does the grouse, certainly not to me, I know not a whiskey drinker, but if you look at the packaging and the appeal of that, it's not, to my mind, as attractive as what's going on with Johnny Walker. So.
But no, for sure. It's interesting, but it got me thinking there. So you're talking about how a consumer may make a decision, a purchase decision, or how their relationship with that brand is affected through all those things. But I started to think then, well, what is my choice around the Scottish football team? Because it's very tribal, or broader than that, it's nationalistic, isn't it? So I don't really have a choice in that. That's my national team, therefore that's who I support. But I guess what I was interested in is the characteristics of the Scottish football team, and maybe is there a connection? So it's this cultural context again. So is it, how closely linked is it to Scottish characteristics? And the kind of recent, semi-recent, a generation almost of failures of to qualify. We actually had a very great, really good track record of qualifying for World Cups through the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s, and then since then we've kind of failed. But it's been a quite a dramatic, almost a romantic failure. And it made me think about some of our historic figures. Bonnie Prince Charlie, romantic, but romantically flawed, or romantic failure, unfortunately, when you look at his military past. Now, I'm not going to get into the politics of that or whatever, but it almost becomes part of the Scottish identity. Yes, we loved going to World Cups and doing well in Argentina and so on, but there's this almost dramatic effect to fall at the final hurdle. Bonnie Prince Charlie marched as far as Derby and then turned home. We get to the final qualifying game and get beaten in the extra time. And we almost somehow get some perverted sort of enjoyment out of that, certainly in the press. They make a great deal out of that failure. So it's really refreshing to have success.
Well, I mean, I can totally identify what you're saying. I mean, one thing that came to mind as you were saying all of that was, we're talking about brand storytelling at the start, was, you and I talked about it, the Robert the Bruce myth, legend, the cave, maybe an Aaron, the spider, hiding, recovering, thinking, feeling, and just, as the myth goes, just about ready to give it up, but then notices the spider, and the web keeps breaking, the spider keeps getting back up, get back up, keep trying one last time, and then you win. So, I mean, that's psychic distance, because you're Scottish, because I'm Scottish, between us and the football team is organically there. But there is also the story of the, well, but but they've kept going back, they've tenacity, they keep trying. And here we are with, this recent success. And okay, there you go, and the story begins to change, and it's taken a while, but it's a good story, right?
And then another part of the Scottish psyche, or possibly part of the Scottish brand, if you like, is that, well, you know, the Scottish supporters, let's hope they get to travel. Well, actually, there's going to be some home games in this
Aye,
tournament, but there's a fixture in London at Wembley,
aye,
and you can bet your bottom dollar that the Scottish fans are going to party and they're going to really enjoy themselves,
yes.
and that's all part of the story and the culture and so on.
Aye, the Tartan Army
Tartan
and the
Army.
experience and the camaraderie associated with it in a very positive sense. And I mean, Scotland, if you go back, there are different Scotland's, the Enlightenment, all of the innovations, and there's nowhere quite like it. You know, if there are different ways to look at it, and I think that this is a very good example. And I did notice, I kind of had a wee look, and I noticed that Adidas was on the coach's shirt and so on, and that little mountain, those three stripes are going up the way. I mean, little synergies there, you know, and good for them. No matter what happens, you know, it's a good period of time, and it's something to add to the story. The other thing, you know, if that, and it's an organic, it's a real story. Nike back in the day has invented that story. You know, it's overcoming the monster. I mean, it's a classic in literature. It's a device that something happens to the protagonist, and he or she is diminished somewhat, and then recovers and succeeds and wins and ends up in a better place, you know, overcoming the monster. So, I mean, this is actually real, it's authentic, and I think it's a good story. Yeah.
I think it is, and what you're talking about there is the theme that we've been coming back to, you know, throughout this year of 2020,
Mm-hmm.
strange year that it's been, is that the mythology, and how important that is in brands. But I think we're probably fair to say that we're happy with those, to call them iconic Scottish football team
Oh,
and
yeah.
Johnny Walker.
Yeah.
So let's put them on the pedestal, and we can drink a dram to them and say, there you are, two iconic Scottish brands. Thanks
I,
again, Ron. Nice talking to you.
cheers.